Hello, my name is Daniel Roberts, a volunteer at the Highline Heritage Museum, and you're listening to Highline Times in History on KQWZ 106.5 FM. And I'm with Roger Price.
We're both here at the museum today. We're sitting in the radio booth of One America. Do a little recordings, and we're going to try to do an ongoing show, a series during the summertime.
And the hope of this program is to record some of the memories of a long-term resident of the Highline area, so that you guys can enjoy it now or years from now.
Okay, well, thank you, Daniel. Yes, KQWZ 106.5.
Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Price, and I'm a volunteer here at the Highline Heritage Museum. And today, I think we're gonna talk about the Camp Waskowitz, which is located up in North Bend, and it's originally, I believe, it was a part of the program back from the 1930s of CCC camps that were established around the country to kind of get the little springboard into getting people employed again, because it was during the hard times of the Depression. But anyway, Daniel's going to give us a little more insight into how the Waskowitz got going and how it's named and all that. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Roger. So you told me a little bit about Camp Waskowitz, and I did a little bit of research on it. It sounds like the original idea might have started around 1929 between a professor Donald Thompson and his student Carl Jensen, who, as I did some research, had a big role to play in it. And it seemed like the camp ended up in several different locations before it ended up in its final location, which was near the North Bend, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so there was area in it was organized in the as the Kiwanis Club in 1939 in the Highline area, with the camp being suggested as a club activity. And various business owners in the community gave various contributions like transportation to and from the camp or vehicles for transporting equipment as needed. And it was located in this 10-acre tract, wooded tract near Lake Wilderness, that was owned by the Kent Kiwanis Club. And they used the adjacent waterfront as a resort as a kitchen and dining area. The campers would use tents that were borrowed or rented, and a lot of the activities were aquatic ones due to its proximity to the lake and emphasis on nature study and conservation. They had to move to a new spot, though, due to development in the area and the area being a little less secluded. And then the next spot was at Lake Tapps, which was on a plateau above Sumner, with it continuing on until 1941 and activities ending due to World War II. After the Second World War, Jensen decided to search for a new site since Lake Tapps had had all of its lumber and material removed. And an interesting bit I read was that the North Bend site was selected, um, and it ran into some initial issues because of the King County Sheriff's staff beating them to the punch on the title of the land. Though I guess their own attempt at a camp didn't meet much success, and so they eventually ended up renting out the land to Jensen. Until, however, like the land was sold to another person who they initially were able to continue renting the land from. He had improved the area. He had a pool built, rebuilt the barn for the youth symphony group, and made various other improvements. However, while the improvements were nice, it did result in him continuing to improve, like increasing the rent. And then they basically went to several different locations at the time because they couldn't really afford it until they finally were returned to that original location and they were able to buy the land up. The problem with that was that the original price that they had been hoping for, which was around $10,000, jumped up to $90,000 due to all those improvements. So that's quite a bit of a jump. But Jensen was able to get a loan by borrowing from the Memorial Field Bleacher Fund after getting a vote of approval from the students. The loan was repaid in 2 years at a 6% interest rate, which, that sounds pretty impressive to me. Uh, the total cost was paid in 5 years then. Then the work didn't stop there though. That due to a change in they needed to change the state laws for the school district for the school to actually be able to own the land. And then they had to buy additional acres since the playfield wasn't all within the 9 acres that they had purchased. And apparently it wasn't done in any major, like any official capacity. It was more of a handshake agreement. Yeah, but to the person that made the agreement, to their credit, they honored it and they were able to get an additional 33 acres and the land across like a nearby river. And this afforded them more privacy. And I, th from what it looks like, Jensen continued buying up land around the area just to make sure that the area remained secluded, was more of a wilderness area. And, given that first camp's location where they had to move it because it was developed, that makes a lot of sense. It
Yes.
it seems like a lot of the times it was Jensen taking the risk on it, like, he was taking on the loan until like a final part of the land where he asked someone else to kind of do it for him because he was like, I'm guessing he probably was kind of tired of him being the one taking on that risk, even though he seemed rather well at, paying back the loans. I did see a side note on how it got the name Waskowitz. It had come from the lieutenant of the sheriff's department who was friends with a Fritz Waskowitz, who was a football player that had been recruited from Chicago until he had dropped out and joined the Air Force. Sadly, he had been later shot down and killed in Guadalcanal. But they kept the name because it sounded Indian sounding, despite it being of Polish origin. And some of the listed characteristics of these camp activities was a focus on conservation and some general science activities. Usually they were short in duration, around 3 days, and high school students usually assisted senior leaders who were teacher volunteers. Some studies included animal life, bird study, fish, water resources, weather, logging, and reforestation. They got uh, the camp recognized nationally and abroad, and they were doing pretty well until Sputnik came around, and there was a more of an emphasis on science above all else, and causing a discouragement on outdoor activities. It what they ended up doing was kind of going with referring to it instead of camping and saying it was more of outdoor science lab and just avoiding the word camping in general.
Oh, I see. Uh,
But yeah, that's a lot of what I had read of. But you're from this area, and so you probably have a good idea that goes beyond what I can just find in books.
yeah, yes, it was it was a great place. I know, I believe it was 19 well, what they did was in 1947 they started sending Highline schools sending kids to that camp, but in 1957 the students purchased the camp uh, back then, and so then they were officially, I guess, considered part of the programming to send kids to the camp. And I remember I went there. I believe it was 1961. I was in the sixth grade, and that usually was a combination of maybe three grade schools or elementary schools, and they would send one classroom of sixth graders. and the three schools would stay there for 1 week up at Camp Waskowitz, and they had dormitories, or well, they weren't really dormitories; they were, living quarters for all this, and so it was really a lot of fun. I remember I can vaguely remember a lot of the things we did, but one person that was in the bunk house next to me was happened to be a his name was Ernie Janet, and he was probably, I think that was he was going to Boulevard Park then, because they also sent kids to this camp. But yeah, we had pretty good friends in a short period of time over a week, but. And then after that, I don't think I ever saw him again until maybe high school. But he was at Glacier, and I was going to Highline, so it was more of a rivalry. I didn't play football like he did. He excelled at it, so it was. But it was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy Camp Waskowitz, and I all the years that we went there, or all the years that I remember, it was just a lot good memories of different things. And we used to get a glass, and they put a little fish in there, and you would release the fish into the river there alongside the camp. And I think total over the all the years, I think Carl Jensen purchased around 372 acres. So it was a pretty sizable piece of property they had. I believe it's still like that today. But so, and you mentioned also, Daniel, Fritz Waskowitz. Yes, he got recruited out of Chicago to play football at the UW. And then he ended up, like you say, going in the Air Force. And I believe it was, he flew about 40 missions during World War II, but I believe it was one of the last missions he had just before he could get sent back home was when he was shot down. So that was really a tragic deal. And another person of interest was Harry Lemon. He was very well known in the Highline School District. I remember I didn't have him. I think he had maybe retired from Highline when I was there in 65 through 67, but he was from Seahurst, lived there quite a few years, I should say. And he was a naturalist the, up at the Camp Waskowitz from about 1963 to 75. He was always involved in things going on up there. So him and Carl Jensen were real instrumental in getting this camp going, and making it what it is today. So it was a lot of fun up there. But yeah, I don't know if Daniel, if there's a few things else you'd can offer, but I know we just finished the exhibit in the museum. It's a very well done exhibit. Dave did an excellent job putting it together. So uh, everybody should set aside a little time and try to visit the museum sometime, and check out the Camp Waskowitz exhibit. It's bring back for the people that are from around here, bring back a lot of memories. And then we also had a new exhibit also of the Miss Erie and Miss Washington pageant that used to operate here over the years, and the different gals that won Miss Washington and went on to even higher things like maybe Miss USA. I know there's several gals that ended up doing that too, but we have a few new exhibits that I'd like for everybody to come in and check out sometime.
Oh, for sure. And it's just kind of I'm a little envious of the people that grew up here that had those camps available. Where I grew up, well, it was mostly desert, and my camping was reserved for Boy Scouts. Still good, but not bad. But not the same as meeting kids from different school districts. But I think just the kind of big takeaway is how just a couple of people, if with a lot of, if with enough determination, they're able to make a lasting impact. I mean, this Carl Jensen fellow, and Harry Lemon, if I got the name right. Yep,
Yes.
their uh their actions are still having effects on kids today, and positive ones it seems like. So,
Yes, I think so. I think Carl Jensen, who actually did so much for the Highline area, that him and Harry have contributed so much of their time and efforts to those kind of things that they were to be commended. And I'm sure both of them received a lot of awards over their time too. So it was great to do this.
well, unless you have anything else to add, I think that just about wraps it up.
I'd like to also add in before I close that this Camp Waskowitz, which was called Camp North Bend originally, is the last of two remaining CCC camps, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps that was built back in 1935. But so I think the Highline School District started sending students there in 1947, and then also in 57, the students purchased the property. So that was the beginning of really when the school camp got going. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I remember being there. It was quite a few years ago, but yeah, I always enjoyed Camp Waskowitz, and I think everybody that's ever attended has always had a good, favorable outcome from outdoor learning and the environment and different things. So that's some of the things that I've followed over the years. But anyway, Daniel, that's kind of how I enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it was like in 1957 is when they basically finished purchasing or starting to purchase that land, and then it was that whole ordeal I was talking about of having to purchase more land, having to purchase more land to make
Uh-huh.
sure it stayed isolated, I guess.
Yeah.
I think he probably remembered that other camp where, it had been developed, and so he wanted to avoid that.
And I think I believe now it's up to 345 acres, I think. So it's got a nice buffer and it's also used when the school's not using it. People can use the trails and different things. There's a lot of trails and stuff up there to you can walk through. So
Yeah, and I guess I'd also read a little bit about that, even high schoolers are kind of involved in it by getting leadership training by being the ones that help the kids
yeah,
out.
the
So
counselors, exactly.
so a very cool thing. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, I don't know. I think we've covered everything, but we probably will have more segments on this at later dates.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a very interesting camp. So if you have anything else to ever add on it, by all means, it'd be fun to revisit it. So thank you, folks, for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll continue listening. And you all have a good day.